Welcome to the Prophecy Club. Our topic today is Russia's secret weapon to defeat America. Leslie and I are going to minister in Honduras, and we appreciate your prayers. And also, we're going to be cutting two 2.5-hour recordings into daily programs while we're gone. The first one is Russia's secret weapon to defeat America. In my opinion, out of the 300 DVDs we have made over a 25-year period, this is one of my favorite. It's one of the best, and you'll be glad we put it up. So Bill reveals technology that the Russians have that can knock out anything on the land, on the sea, under the sea, or in the air, any place on the globe with little to no trace of who did it. Scalar wave renders all conventional weapons of war obsolete against the Soviet energetics weapons. Scalar waves has now changed how war is conducted. Scalar wave does not travel like radar from point A to B. Instead, it is interdimensional. It leaves A and arrives over at C, D, or maybe all the way out to X, Y, or Z without a trace. It is believed to be what took out the Thresher submarine back in the 60s and the Challenger. It is also believed to be able to kill large amounts of birds in flight, dead before they hit the ground, and likewise fish in water or sea with no trace of cause. It leaves no trace except the birds simply leave the area. It is also believed to be what took out Gary Powers and the U-2 spy plane over Russia back in the 60s. They can make large portions of the atmosphere very cold, creating massive cold storms, or super hot, creating massive droughts, heat waves, hurricanes. It is also believed that they can create sparks out of thin air, causing forest fires any place they want to on the globe, anytime they want to. It is suspected to be the cause of many of the superheat and super cold storms across America over the last 20 years. It is the perfect weapon because it can't be proven that it was caused by a scalar wave. It can act like an umbrella, protecting an entire city or an entire nation from all incoming missile attacks, air or water. And you can watch the whole thing, plus some 300 others similar to it, at watchprophecyclub.com. Each one of them are about 2.5 hours each, over 300 of them there. $20 a month is all, $200 a year. Unsubscribe anytime you want to. Go to watchprophecyclub.com. Now, unfortunately, I need to say that Prophecy Club is in a bit of a pinch. And if God has blessed you, and you believe in Prophecy Club, believe in Warning America, if you can help us, now would be a really, really good time. If you don't want to lose your life's savings, if you have an IRA or a 401k, the thing to do is call 800-200-GOLD. 800-200-GOLD. These folks are Christians, and they specialize in helping people not lose their life savings in the event of a stock market crash and things like that. Look, most of the 401ks, most of the IRAs are in paper, backed by paper, and as Lindsey Williams says, if it's in paper, it's worth the paper it's written on. You can lose it all. 1-800-200-GOLD. 800-200-GOLD. Hey, give them a call. Doesn't hurt, doesn't cost you anything. See if they can give you some good advice.
Welcome to the Prophecy Club, where we provide information and resources with a prophetic warning message to win souls to Jesus and to call people to repentance. Now, I need to take just a minute. I normally like to keep these introductions real short. On this one, I have to tell you a little bit more how this all came up. God just began to lay in my heart. It was kind of like just something that just wouldn't go away. About a couple of things, a couple of comments that I had read in Dimitri's testimony and in some of his dreams and visions. And I want to read part of that to you and explain to you how this talk all came about tonight. From the dream or vision called The Beast Strikes, it says, his voice boomed at me, telling me to look to the right. I was awake, not sleeping. I was standing and I turned my head as ordered. When I looked, I saw that there was a great flock of black birds with very sharp, large beaks. Out of the beaks came a blinding light. Now, folks, what he's talking about is birds that have, not just birds, I mean, it's actually airplanes that has a blinding light coming out of them. Okay, continue. Blinding light, which I could barely look at. From their tails, I saw flames of fire shooting out. I then became very scared. I rubbed my eyes thinking I was sleeping and dreaming. I was neither sleeping nor dreaming. In other words, it was a vision. This flock of birds suddenly turned into airplanes that did not make any noise. In other words, what this prophet of God was seeing is some kind of a new advanced Russian weapon. Airplanes that can fly through the air that do not make any noise. Does America have any airplanes that can fly through the air that doesn't make any noise? Not that I know of anyway. That don't make any noise. And then from their tails, lightning or flames of fire shoot out. Now that sounds like it might be laser. Some kind of a new weapon. Some kind of a new airplane flies through the air silently that has a laser that can knock out anything else that is attacking it, whether it's a missile, ground-to-air missile, an air-to-air missile, or some kind of another plane. The American airplanes would go up trying to attack, but as they would draw close, they would fall to the earth in a blaze of fire. Folks, that is pretty dangerous to think that the Russians have some kind of an airplane that can fly silently and knock out anything that we throw at it. Okay, there's more. From Sanctify You and Yours, it said, it seemed I was suddenly on an American airplane, which was about to land with me in California. I heard sirens which howled loudly, and a great sound of many engines, plane engines, was heard. The noise of the engines grew louder. The man beside me, the angel, the man beside me turned to me and said, these are planes loaded with atom bombs, and no one and nothing will be able to stop them. Then suddenly a great number of black planes lifted off the ground like a flock of birds. I knew the planes were American. Once again, the American planes could do nothing. This kept kind of like grinding in my spirit. What is this? Does Russia have some kind of a new secret weapon where it would totally annihilate anything that we have in the way of an air force, so much so that they could fly airplanes filled with atom bombs over America and drop them at will, and we were helpless to stop them. And this began to grind in my spirit, and it just wouldn't go away. And I dug this out and I read it again. And it was like God was just laying on my heart, I have to do something to expose this. And I thought, well, fine, I mean, I guess I'll research it, but I mean, I'm not really much of a technical person, and it would be very difficult for my brain, without the supernatural help of God, to remember all of this technical stuff. But I was determined to share with you what I think could be a prophet telling us that America is in serious trouble, that the Russians do have some kind of a secret weapon that can knock out anything in the air. And it just kept laying in my heart. And then I remembered someone mentioning something about scalar wave. And then I remembered I went to a website one night when I was searching for a speaker, and I found something about scalar wave on that website. So I went to the internet. Sure enough, I looked up scalar wave, popped up, and here was all kinds of stuff, exactly what they're talking about here. So I thought, well, I don't know if this is real or not, and I certainly don't want to be putting anything out that's not accurate. So I prayed, and I said, God, if this scalar wave is what's doing this, if this scalar wave is something that you want me to expose, then I need you to speak to me on it. And I said, I'd like for you to give me a dream on scalar wave. And this particular issue of the magazine, that dream is in its entirety, along with part of what I'm talking about here. I put the dream in the magazine, May-June 2005 issue. Here's the dream. I dreamed that I was sitting in my car along the side of the road. I walked over to my car and I sat down in my car. As I sat down, instantly the engine started. Well, I thought, well, I haven't even reached in, sometimes you sit down in your car, you realize your keys are still in your pocket. I realized the keys are still in my pocket. The car started, and all of a sudden it started moving forward. I felt my keys in my pocket. So now it's going by itself. I push on the brake. It doesn't stop. I push on the brake again. It still doesn't stop. I stand on the brake. I look up. I'm coming to an intersection. Cars are going like this. And I kind of like time it so because I couldn't stop the car. The car's going like this, and I timed it so I could move right between the cars, standing on the brake, lifting up on the steering wheel with all I could do. Finally, I was able to get the car to pull over and stop. And I stopped right in front of someone I knew. His name was, I think it was Jimmy Weathers. I'm having to do this from memory here. Jimmy Weathers. But I don't know a Jimmy Weathers. Okay, that has to do with the dream. He was bouncing a basketball with his son and playing basketball, and I thought, oh no, he knows about scalar wave. I've got to get out of here quick. So then I reached down and I put my keys in, I started the car, but as soon as the car started, he looked up and saw me. I quickly did a U-turn. Now I'm going back through that intersection again. As I'm heading toward the intersection, now I look up and there's this ball of energy in the sky. And this is the best way I know of to try to explain to you what that ball of energy looked like. It was about the size of a beach ball, maybe a little bit larger than a beach ball. On the inside of that beach ball, there was absolutely nothing. But on the outside of it, going in all direction, was like electricity, like little bitty lightning bolts. Have you ever seen these glass globes that have the lightning on the inside of it? You walk up and you can just touch it, and the lightning goes to your finger, like that. It was exactly like that, except for the lightning was on the outside of the ball, not on the inside of the ball. So anyway, I'm driving along and I looked up and I see this ball with all this lightning coming from it. Somehow I knew instantly that it was scalar wave, that it was after me. And I could tell also that it was searching. It was trying to hit me. And if it hit me, I knew that it would kill me. And so I was steering like this and steering like this to the left, to the right, and then I would slow the car down, and it looked like it took just a second for it to see where I was and then start coming at me again. And I would turn to the left, I'd speed up, and I'm doing like this to stay away from this thing. Finally, the dream ended. And I woke up and I said, Lord, I went and got my tape recorder. I said, Lord, I have to know, what are you saying to me? And immediately the interpretation came to me. Here's what he's saying. Essentially, that scalar wave, that this sort of stuff, this high-tech things that we were discussing here, is real. That's the most important thing. I also think Jimmy Weathers, since I've never known anybody named Jimmy Weathers, I think that is saying that it controls the weather. It has to do with the weather. Now, I did not know that this ball of energy was in fact round. It could have been lightning, I don't know what. But in the dream, I saw it as a ball of energy. When I was interviewing Bill on the radio, he said, and it's a ball of energy. And I thought, yeah, that's right. That's a confirmation that the dream was from God, that it was showing me about scalar wave, and that I'm supposed to expose this. So at that point, I thought, well, I have two things that I can do. One is either I can spend some serious time researching this, try to put together a presentation on it, and expose scalar wave to people. But in order to do that, then I have to go out on a speaking tour. And I've got a ministry to run, and I'm real busy. And besides that, my brain just feels tired. I'm just, to be frank, honest with you. I mean, matter of fact, I've just given 3 presentations here the last 2 days, and I'm glad I didn't have to go out on tour. Lord, I'm pleased to serve anytime you send me, but I mean, I was tired. So I called Bill Schnoebelen. I said, Bill, this and such is all going on. Let me tell you about it. You ever heard of scalar wave? He said, what? I said, scalar wave. He says, no, I haven't. Well, after he got to researching it, he realized that he had heard of it. But at the time, he couldn't even remember. This is just to show you where he is. He couldn't even remember that he'd even heard of scalar wave. And I said, all right, here's the deal. I have talked to this guy. I found him on the internet. I've talked to this guy, and he is an expert on it. I am going to give you his name. I'm going to give you a stack of material. In addition to that, he is going to send you a stack of material, and he is going to inform you on everything you need to know to speak on scalar wave. Well, why can't he talk on it? He said this to me, quote, he said, I'm a brother in the Lord like you. He said, please do not tell anybody my name. He said, so far, they don't mind me putting on the internet, but they will not let me speak on the radio, on TV, do any kind of a public interview or a public speech or anything like that. And he says, please, I'm a brother in the Lord too. And he said, if you tell my name, I will be dead within 24 hours. And he said, please do not reveal my name. And so what we're revealing to you tonight is apparently some pretty important stuff, because I don't know if you knew this or not, but at least one of your meetings, a government official was at the meeting. Somebody might say, well, hey, doesn't that bother you? No, because I'd like for them to listen. As a matter of fact, what I'd like to see is President Bush invite me into the White House to speak and to tell him about these things. And what I want him to do is invite me there so I can reveal like Jonah did to the king. In other words, I don't want him to invite me there to play golf. I want him to invite me there, let me tell him what the word of the Lord is and what he must do if he wants to save his beloved America. And right now, I see that America is not taking even the slightest step in the right direction towards repentance. Right now, I have to say, everything that's been prophesied to come to pass about this nation certainly seems to be doing it. You can find it in Revelation 18, Isaiah 47, Isaiah 13, and Jeremiah 50 and 51. All of that is talking about America. Now, with that, let me introduce your speaker tonight. The topic of this video and also DVD is called Russia's Secret Weapon to Destroy America. And I think that we need to know how much trouble our nation is in. Your speaker has made the following videotapes for the Prophecy Club in addition to a very successful ministry of his own. He's made Exposing the Illuminati from Within, one of our most successful and popular videos. The Light Behind Masonry, Medical Conspiracy, How Jesus Sets the Captives Free, Islam, Israel, Biochemical Nuclear Terrorism, and What's Wrong with Mormonism. Will you help me welcome your speaker for this evening, Bill Schnoebelen. Bless you, brother.
Yeah, thank you. Well, after that introduction, I think you all can understand this is some pretty significant and pretty serious stuff. What Stan mentioned is that I had to kind of search my memory to recall that actually I had heard of this stuff actually some 30 years ago. We had a gentleman in our coven. I used to be a high priest of witchcraft, among many other things, and he was an electrician about my age. I think he was born 48 or 49, and he believed he was a reincarnation of Nikola Tesla. And that name is going to be very, very significant tonight. And because of that, he was very interested in Tesla's work. He had, at that time, every book that he could find that was in print about Tesla, and he would often tell us about the amazing things this man achieved in his life. He died in 1943, the Tesla did. And so he was telling me about how this fellow had plans for a death beam that could take out thousands of airplanes at once, or free electrical power for everyone on Earth, how he invented the science of robotics, and so on. And so, you know, at that time, I don't know if he actually used the word scalar weapon or scalar energy, but I knew he was talking about energy from the vacuum. And that's what we're going to be speaking about tonight. So I had some background in it, but of course my main thrust in my ministry is, of course, Bible preaching and apologetics. So this is a little different for me tonight. I ask you to bear with me. This is a very important point you all need to remember. This is a statement by an eminent scientist in 1899. Everything that can be invented has been invented. Now, I don't know if anybody here can remember 1899. I kind of doubt it. But I know in my relatively short life, I can remember hundreds of inventions, and some of them remarkable, like the personal computer, like the internet, like, color television, or putting a man on the moon. So obviously this guy was wrong. And that's the problem, see. Most people don't understand that science is a religion, just like any other. Some scientists are almost like cultists. And when I say that, I'm not being disrespectful, I'm just telling you the way it is. Because scientists have these beliefs, and many of those beliefs have no more basis in fact than the beliefs of any other religious system. Just as one example, 50 years or so before this statement, scientists were warning that we'd better not use trains, because everyone understands that if the human body goes faster than 40 miles an hour, your head will explode. Now that was scientific dogma. They also, of course, said that man would never fly. They said in the 1950s man would never go to the moon. and so on and so on. So obviously science has these faulty beliefs, and if you come along with something that is heterodox or heretical to those beliefs, like for instance Mr. Tesla, they'll tend to just kind of shove you down the memory hole. So that is the problem, is that America has basically ignored some of these technological advances, and as we'll see tonight, Russia has not. The other thing that's interesting is this particular scripture, Revelation 11:18, has been kind of floating around between Stan and I concerning this, this entire issue, and especially the last clause, where it talks about those which destroy the earth. Now that's interesting, because most of us will read that passage and they'll think, oh, well, you know, yeah, we have nuclear weapons, or we're talking about an environmental catastrophe or something like that where we'll destroy the earth. But actually that's not true. None of those things can destroy the earth. They can make the surface of the earth miserable. You know, you can have nuclear winter or fallout, and basically the only thing that's left alive on the earth are cockroaches, you know, but the earth itself is fine, you know. So what does this refer to? Well, to decode this, we have to go back to Mr. Tesla again. And he made a statement like 70 years ago where he said, if you understand the principles of magnetic resonance, you could split the earth in two like an apple. Split the entire planet in two like an apple. Now that's destroying the earth, amen? I mean, that's much more than just, you know, having a nuclear fallout land on everybody. So then he was again discussing this many years ago. So I think this is what that applies to. Now, what are these weapons really? Well, first of all, we all understand normal weaponry, like you know, a gun. You fire a projectile out of the gun, it's propelled by gunpowder, it travels, it hits its target. Or bombs, we understand those things, they're physical. Also, they've been around for generations. But these are called energetics weapons, and that's, the Russians coined that phrase. Another term that we use here in America is DEW, or directed energy weapons. The big difference is that these weapons fire energy rather than a physical projectile. And so we're kind of in the realm of ray guns, if you will, things like that. And the problem that we have is that most of these weapons function in a way that's contrary to the accepted concepts of physics as they're taught in the West. Instead, they rely on the latest concepts, at least to us, of quantum physics. Now, what's quantum physics? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but essentially it's a variety of physics that deals with subatomic, submolecular, you know, the very tiniest particles that are out there, down at the very, you know, protons, neutrons, electrons, quarks, charm quarks, neutrinos, croutons, protons, etc. See, I threw in the croutons to see if you're paying attention. And all of these move in a fashion that at times seems counterintuitive to the way we think the world works. Just as one example, there's a subatomic particle called the neutrino, which is able to travel through a light year of lead instantly, just like that. Now, that's supposed to be impossible. That's supposed to be contrary to all known laws of physics, but it winks out of existence in our universe, and microseconds later, it winks back into existence somewhere else. Very strange particle. And it's this kind of spooky stuff that is what we're dealing with here tonight. Now, these weapons are beyond Star Trek. Now, I'm using Star Trek because it's very well known. I'm sure probably most of you have at least seen one episode of Star Trek. I don't care how sanctified you are. And, you know, the little spaceships flying through the sky, you know, like that with lasers or phasers or whatever they are. You know, that stuff is like buggy whips. And this stuff is like a Maserati that we're talking about tonight. So this stuff is so advanced that even most science fiction writers haven't used it as, and it certainly, to my knowledge, has never appeared in any science fiction film. Okay, what are energetics? Well, we all kind of understand electromagnetic energy. It's what runs virtually everything we have. I mean, from our homes, our cars, whatever. And electromagnetic energy travels in transverse waves. And everybody understands that, no contest. However, scalar waves are of a different variety. They are longitudinal in nature. That means they go in the opposite direction. And in scalar mode, electromagnetic energy can be changed into gravitational energy and vice versa. Now, that's a little hard to understand, and I want to apologize. The next few of these slides are going to be a little bit dense in terms of physics, but I'll try and get through them and make it as easy as you can. Gravitation is not readily understood. We more or less understand electromagnetism, but we know gravity works. I mean, we know if we take an apple and drop it, it'll fall to the earth. But why does that happen? Well, Einstein, many years ago, came up with a postulation. He said the entire Earth, or the entire universe for that matter, is one big sphere. It's like a giant bubble that's hollow inside. And that when you have a large mass, like a planet or a star or something of that nature, in space, it causes a dimple in the fabric of space. It causes a little divot, if you will, like that, those of you that are golfers. And that is called a gravity well. And so if something comes along, like a comet or whatever, and it hits the edge of this gravity well, it starts going into this circular motion, just like in your bathroom sink. If you put a marble in your bathroom sink, it'll go around and around and around, and eventually it'll come right to the drain. That's what happens with a meteor. It will go around and around the Earth and eventually hit the Earth's atmosphere and hopefully burn up. So that was Einstein's explanation for gravity. And the way we know it's true is some years after that, they took a picture of a solar eclipse. Now that's where you have the moon coming between us and the sun, okay? So you see this black circle with these prominences, the solar corona flaring up around it. And what they noticed was something really astonishing. They could look at that black disk that was inside the sun, or appeared to be. You know what they saw? They saw a star inside of that black disk. And that told them that Einstein was right. You know why? Because what had happened is that the starlight was coming into the sun's gravity well, and it bent around the sun and came out the other side. So to us, on Earth, it appeared as though the line went straight through the sun, and we were actually seeing through the sun. Actually, the sun was able to bend light. Now that sounds really bizarre to people that live on the Earth in the real world, you know. But if you're an astrophysicist, that's common knowledge nowadays. So think of it as something that is very mysterious, that can even bend the very fabric of light. Now, this energy exchange that we're talking about between electromagnetic and electrogravitic energy can be localized or aimed to a specific location. In other words, you can target things with it. Scalar waves don't exist in our normal world normally. They are in the vacuum of space. They exist in the dimension of time. And since the vacuum of space exists everywhere, scalar waves can draw on vast amounts of energy. This is called energy from the vacuum, or zero-point energy. This energy can be transmitted faster, literally, than the speed of light. Now, Einstein taught that the speed of light is the speed limit of the universe. And what it is roughly 186,000 miles a second. Or, if you prefer, 670 million miles an hour. So that's a whole lot faster than you can go in your car, I'm sure. And the interesting thing is that if you were to say the word light, in the time it takes to say the word light, light can travel around the world 7 times. That's how fast it is. So it's very, very fast. But Einstein taught that you can't go faster than that. As we will see tonight, Einstein has been proven wrong in several ways. The way these scalar waves travel faster than light is that they go through hyperspace and go around regular space. Now, you'll notice here in this chart, you have this large white sphere. That is the universe, okay? And you see the red arrow, it's pointing to the surface of that big white sphere. That is space, just like if you think of a basketball. You think of the rubber or whatever is around the basketball, that's the space. That's where we live. That's where the entire universe lives, is in this thin membrane around this giant nothing, okay? This is what Einstein postulated, and everything so far has proven him right. Now, the question you need to ask yourself if the surface, just the line around the surface of that, that sphere is space, what's inside of it? What's outside of it? Unspace. Now, this might bake your noodle a little, but listen. How long does it take to travel through unspace? No time at all. You can travel anywhere in the universe in a second if you travel through unspace, or as scientists prefer to call it, either subspace or hyperspace. Yeah, these words are not science fiction anymore, even though you hear them used in various science fiction movies, but actually this is a reality. They've determined this is true. So here's how this works. You notice down at the bottom of your screen, there is a scalar transmitter represented by point A. Let's say that's the Crab Nebula, which is millions of light years from Earth, and there's some nasty aliens on that nebula, and they are mad at that destroyer that's up in the upper right-hand corner of the screen that's floating somewhere in the Atlantic. They have scalar weapons. They fire their weapon instantly. It winks out of existence. It follows the trajectory of that red line on the screen, goes through hyperspace in about a second or less, and emerges right on top of that destroyer as a globe of light that then detonates with the near force of a nuclear explosion and blows the destroyer to kingdom come. Now let's bring this down to Earth. Suppose instead of that big white circle being the universe, it's planet Earth, and point A is Moscow. And they, for whatever reason, decide they're going to destroy that battleship that's in the Atlantic Ocean. And so they fire their scalar transmitter. In a second or so or less, the same thing happens. There's no way of seeing this coming. Understand, there is no incoming fire. It's not like a cruise missile or something like that. It's just there all of a sudden. The next second, it detonates and the thing sinks just with all hands on board. This is the nature of this weapon. Now, these next two slides are probably the worst, so bear with me. In the scalar model, time, which Einstein said is the fourth dimension, is actually compressed energy. So imagine being able to use both time and gravity as energy. It is energy which is compressed by exactly the same factor by which matter is considered compressed energy. Now, what does that mean? Well, again, Einstein, we always come back to him, he taught that everything that is physical is actually energy. And he had an equation for that. And the factor by which that energy is converted is the speed of light squared. Now, when you square a number, you multiply it by itself. For example, 2 times 2 is 4. 4 squared is 16. 5 squared is 25, etc. So you take a figure like 186,000 miles an hour, or a second rather, and square it, you've got a very large number. Actually, it's even bigger than that. This is probably the most famous equation in all of physics. Everybody's seen it, even if people don't understand what it means. Here's what it means. E equals mc squared. E is the energy that is released by any amount of matter multiplied by the speed of light in centimeters squared. Now, I don't even know what the speed of light in centimeters is. It doesn't matter. The point is, it's an enormous, enormous amount of energy. And that's what you get with nuclear fission. That's what you get with the atomic bomb or the hydrogen bomb. You have a small amount of fissionable material like uranium, cesium, plutonium, and you slam it together with explosive force. That's what they did with the original atomic bomb, and it creates a nuclear reaction which has a destructive power in either kilotons or, in the case of a hydrogen bomb, megatons of dynamite. A megaton of dynamite is 1 million tons of dynamite. So that's an enormous amount of energy. And that's why when we dropped the very primitive, by our today's standards, nuclear weapons on Hiroshima and Nagasaki back in the end of World War II, that blew up most of their city in each case. Now, there's another equation which is much more powerful but much less well known. This is the scalar equation for the conversion of energy. And what it is E equals delta Tc squared. Now, in physics and engineering, the delta, which is a Greek letter, means change, and the letter T means time. So what this is saying is the energy released by scalar weapons is the change in time times the speed of light squared. So the compression in time times the speed of light squared, and that releases just incredible energy. Now, people ask, what do actual scientists here in the United States understand about this? Well, some of them know something about it, but most of them don't. Either it's outside of their frame of reference, or they're thinking inside of this little box, and they're not willing to think outside of the box. While I was on tour with this talk, I had a lady come up to me and say her daughter was just finishing up her PhD in quantum physics at a very prestigious California university. I won't name the university. She asked her about this stuff, and her daughter says, oh, that's impossible. It can't happen. That's totally impossible. She offered to give her, and her daughter's only like 25 years old, and usually you think younger people are open to new ideas. She handed her this book, said, would you read this book? She says, no, I don't even want to see it. That doesn't even exist. So again, remember, science is often just like a cult. If it's outside of what they believe, they don't want to know about it. So science in this country, the Defense Department knows about some what are called non-conventional weapons. They know about lasers. Of course, big deal. Lasers have been around like forever. We had lasers when I was in high school, for heaven's sakes. We have particle beam weapons. Again, big woo, But most of us have totally missed the boat about this not-so-new weapons technology, which has been around since the 1960s. Recently, well, relatively recently, 1997, Bill Clinton's Secretary of Defense, William Cohen, said this, and this is one of the very few public statements by high-level people in the Defense Department. Others, meaning terrorists, are engaging in an eco-type of terrorism, whereby they can, notice this, alter the climate, set off earthquakes, volcanoes remotely through the use of electromagnetic waves. So there are plenty of ingenious minds out there that are at work finding ways in which they can wreak terror upon other nations. It's real. And that's the reason why we have to intensify our efforts, and that's why this is so important. Now, I never thought I'd agree with anybody in a Clinton administration, but in this case, I have to give this guy a hearty amen. I hope they are following his advice, which he gave like 8 years ago. Now, these are a totally new reality in military combat. They can project electromagnetic or electrogravitic energy to any place on the planet at will. Distance is no deterrent. Since they're faster than light, the energy is projected to the target in nanoseconds, which is so quick you don't even know. It's less than a wink of an eye. Like these scalar weapons are therefore capable of destroying anything, anywhere. Land ordnance, in other words, tanks, jeeps, even entire military bases, naval vessels, and even submarines, and of course planes, jets, and ballistic missiles. They can be directed at an individual site or location. They can even be targeted to hit human targets, even in shielded rooms or underground bunkers. Now, imagine this. You could put the President of the United States 5 miles underground in a room that was lined with a foot of lead on all 6 sides, and they could still turn him into a crispy critter in less than a second. So any kind of shielding is meaningless. They can also be aimed at a pi wedge arc of the sky to take out a large number of aircraft at once. So, for example, here we see the scalar weapon in the center of the horizon line. You know how the horizon appears to be a circle around you as you look at it. And if there was airplanes coming in there, you can see like between 11 and 12 o'clock on the chart. All they have to do is fire the weapon, and every airplane, every bomb, every missile that's in that range of that wedge would just drop to the ground and be totally useless. Then all I have to do is turn it a little bit and take care of the 12 to 1 o'clock, so to speak, then the 2 to 3 o'clock, and so on and so on. So the whole sky can be wiped out of any kind of incoming fire in just a minute or two with this kind of weaponry. To make matters worse, these weapons also can generate an electromagnetic pulse, just like nuclear weapons do. And I know many of you understand, because there's been articles about these in the newspaper and so on, that if a nuclear weapon goes off, especially in the air where there's nothing to impede it, it sends out this pulse that will instantly fry any computer, any microchip, like your cell phones, if you have a pacemaker, any kind of electronic device is basically history and irreparable at that point. Well, there is shielding for that. Like, for example, we're told in the Defense Department and the Pentagon and NORAD or whatever, they have computers that are hardened, that are shielded against this kind of EM pulse. But the problem is there is no shielding against a scalar EM pulse. So basically, if the Russians chose to do so, they could essentially turn off every computer in America with a flick of a switch. Tank warfare, totally obsolete at this point. I mean, if you have a tank that is out there and you hit that tank with scalar weapons, instantly all the men in the tank are going to die. They're just going to drop down dead. The fuel in the tank will explode. The weapons in the tank will explode. And all of the electronic equipment in the tank will instantly be, the term is used, dudded. In other words, it will turn into a giant dud. And then there'll be nothing left of the tank. And that's what military analysts call a K-kill. In other words, there ain't nothing left, folks. So bye-bye to the tank. Now, how are these weapons powered? Well, as already mentioned, vast energy can be pulled from the vacuum state. That's called zero-point energy to power these scalar transmitters. But never leaving anything to chance. I mean, the Russians are very, very compulsive about things. So they have also sunk 27 separate power taps deep in the earth, all over their land. And remember, they have a huge amount of real estate. I mean, I think the Russian, even without the rest of the satellite nations that used to be part of the Soviet Union, they cover 8 time zones, the nation of Russia. So these things sink deep in the earth where they can draw on what is called telluric energy. Now, that may be a word that's not familiar to you, but it's the energy that we can pull right out of the earth. Now, how does that work? Well, as many of you may know, the center of the earth is a molten core of iron, basically, and nickel. And it spins. Now, the mantle of the earth, which is the hard part of the earth, and we live on the surface of that, is going a different direction. And as any person will tell you, that creates a generator. The earth is a giant electromagnetic generator. And this produces what's called the magnetosphere, which is a sphere of electromagnetic energy around the earth. And that's why, for example, you have a compass that points north. It points to the magnetic pole of the earth. And that's why. It's because the earth has a giant magnetic field. And the Russians have figured, well, actually Tesla originally figured out how to draw energy from this giant field. Now, I mentioned Tesla. We're going to get into a little bit of historical background now. A gentleman by the name of E.T. Whittaker, way back in 1903 and 04, wrote papers beginning the ideas of energy from the vacuum and scalar interferometry. Now, that's 100 years ago, folks, more than 100 years ago.
What you've been watching here is us cutting a 2.5-hour DVD into 30-minute segments, but you can watch all of it at watchprophecyclub.com. where you can watch some 300 other DVDs, 2.5 hours each, $20 a month or $200 a year at watchprophecyclub.com. Watchprophecyclub.com. And Prophecy Club is in a bit of a financial jam right now, so if you can help us, if God has blessed you, if you feel like Prophecy Club has blessed you, then we could really use your help. Thank you. We've got a new sponsor. It's sat123.com, sat123.com. I'm amazed at what this company offers. They got satellite phones. They've got Wi-Fi hotspots where you can have internet any place. So suitcase nukes go off in your city. If you don't have to worry about that, you still have electricity. It can go right up and connect to a satellite. They also have marine satellite internet. They also have satellite radios, so that you can talk back and forth, even though, in other words, it's not a phone, it's a radio, but it's satellite. So go check it out, satellite123.com. And if you use the promo code PROPHECY, there are several different kinds of discounts.